Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Garak here. Casual Gamer Dad coming at you guys with another Final Fantasy XIV video. It's patch time. It's a small one. A small patch, but it is still a patch, and of course, as always, I enjoy reviewing said patches and just kind of giving you guys the rundown on the contents without spoilers as best I can, and what to look forward to and how I would rate the patch overall, so to speak. This is our not necessarily the in-between patch, but it kind of is at the same time. We just didn't get everything. We have more stuff coming on the way, such as job balances, the next alliance raid, and I think a small continuation to the main story request. That's all going to happen as of patch 6.28. But right now in patch 6.25, we got a few goodies to just kind of keep us all occupied. I'll start with the least, notable thing in my opinions, going all the way up to the most notable things. Anything that I happen to miss, you can just go ahead and check for yourself on the official patch notes, which I will link in the description down below. So let's just dive in. Let's do it. So the least notable things are just a bunch of small things that they've added. They've added new emotes, new mounts, items. Mostly they're all glamour items, but new glamour items. And they did some very small PvP changes. And when I say very small, like one is literally just displaying a log message when CC registration has been canceled for whatever due to arena changes or anything like that. And the other one, which is very noticeable in the grand scheme of things, this is for all you frontline warriors out there who don't really like any other form of PvP and you just like the madness and chaos that comes with frontlines. Whenever you play on Ansal Hakar or whatever the other map is, I can't remember the name of it, but the other map where you have to actually like interact with, click, and capture points, you don't have to worry about paladin cheese no more. So for those of you who weren't aware, there was a bug which a lot of people, especially those who mained paladin in frontlines, would argue about whether or not it was an intended feature or not. But ever since this patch 6.1 PvP revamp, paladins have an ability known as Guardian, which they are able to use. And when they used it, it was discovered that when used properly, they could essentially negate any risk or any interruption from capturing a point. And it was cheesy and it was stupid and it was awful to have to deal with, because as long as you had like 4 or 5 paladins on your team, you could just flip everything and not have to worry about it, because they would just use Guardian and then you just go in and just flip it, and there's nothing you can do about it. The enemy can't do anything. Damage doesn't do nothing. CCs are ineffective. All of it. So Square Enix with this patch has gone ahead and fixed that. You can no longer do that. Period. So, oh, excuse me. I'm sorry for the yawn. So yeah, those of us who absolutely hated it whenever that happened, day to celebrate. Big claps. For those of you who think it was supposed to be an intended use of the ability and saw nothing wrong with doing it, you can go fuck yourself. Sorry, it's blunt, but it's honest. Like, I can't stand people who think, oh, well, I'm just using things to my advantage in PvP. No, you're not. You're cheesing, which is essentially cheating, and it's stupid, and you're stupid for doing it. Like, you do it once, it's fun, okay, but then you do it more, and it's dumb. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now, because that's a whole different video if I hadn't decided to bring it up. Moving on to the other features of patch 6.25. These are some of the bigger ones. First off is the new Beast Tribe quest. Sorry, my brain went blank there for a minute. New Beast Tribe quests. We have a Beast Tribe quest for the Omnicrons. We are basically helping them build a cafe out in the middle of absolute fuck all nowhere at the end of the universe. and it's going to be cool. For those of you who aren't aware, this is a set of Beast Tribe dailies that focus on Disciples of the Land. So if you've been lazy about leveling up your gatherers, as long as they are level 80 minimum, you can use this as a method to level them. I mean, at this point, with both the Omnicrons and just how easy it is to level up Disciples of the Land in general anyway, there is zero reason for anybody to not have all three Disciples of the Land at max level, unless their reasoning is, I just absolutely hate gathering and I refuse to do it. If that's not your reasoning, then let's go. Come on, this is the perfect time to do it. As always, with any beast tribe, we all know the main purpose of doing them. Getting levels on jobs that you haven't leveled up is kind of more of a side perk, but we all know what everybody wants. We want that reputation at max so we can collect them tokens and drop them on whatever the mount is. And if I'm not mistaken, the mount for this one is the big giant space jellyfish mount, which is pretty freaking cool looking. So you could bet your ass I'll definitely be farming that rep. Moving on to the next most interesting thing, is new. All right, I gotta think of how I can say this. It's a new dungeon, but alongside of it being a new dungeon, it's a new type of dungeon. Now, this is something that Square Enix has been talking about for a long time. The community has been waiting for it for a long time, and that is, of course, none other than the variant and / or criterion dungeons. Okay, now this can be very confusing, or at least for me, up until I got into game and actually like did it myself. It was very confusing for me. I couldn't figure out, like, well, is it one dungeon? Is it multiple dungeons? Is it like Palace of the Dead? Is it like Heaven on High? Is it like both crammed together? Is it more like Eureka and or Boja? I, I didn't understand what it was. I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb. I am kind of slow, but regardless of that fact, um, once I jumped in game and I actually like got my hands on it, I was like, oh, okay, it all makes sense now. I totally get it. So I'm gonna give you all a real quick rundown of what they are, or what it is. So let me turn on my UI here real quick. Don't mind the mess here. I'm on my private island. But basically, once you get to the point of unlocking it, you'll start in Old Charlotte and you're gonna talk to NPC down there where the hunt vendors are. I think his name is like Osmo or something like that. It starts with an O. And then you talk to another NPC called Deep Shallows. You do some story, a couple cutscenes. You go back to Thanalan, and you talk to another NPC, and bada boom, you unlock it, and you get this right here in your duty exclamation mark menu here. You get V&C Dungeon Finder. Okay? So the name of the dungeon itself is the Sildon Subterrane. Okay, you get 40 tomes of astronomy, 25 tomes of casualty, and you can see there's like all kinds of stuff here. So when you first unlock this, the only thing you can do is the variant dungeon itself, which of course you can see here. This is the main menu of it. When you switch to variant dungeon, you get this thing, right? There's a bajillion and one different ways that you can do this. The variant dungeons themselves are story driven. When you first enter the dungeon and you start, you will be accompanied by an NPC. I'm not going to tell you who it is because of spoilers, but nevertheless, she will kind of guide you through the dungeon, kind of, sort of. And the first time you do it, I don't know if you have a choice on where you go and what you do the first time you do it. I just kind of followed her around, just went with whatever the main path was that she did. I didn't really do any exploration. Nevertheless, there's how do I explain it? There's various different ways to complete the dungeon successfully, and you can see on this little book here, this is our journal. You can see we have a bunch of little ticks here, and there are 12 total. So there are 12 different possibilities, or 12 possible different storylines that you could unlock and follow within the variant dungeon. It's up to you if you want to do all of them, but you get something pretty nifty cool if you do unlock all 12, so just keep that in mind. The variant dungeons are kind of like a combination of Boja and Palace of the Dead put together. And what I mean by that is there's no loot. You don't get rewarded with loot, but you do get rewarded with pot shards that you can turn in for rewards, which I'll go over in a little bit what those are. But variant dungeons can be done in any size party up to a maximum of 4. So you can do it solo, you can do it with 2 people, you can do it with 3 people, you can do it with 4 people. It's totally viable. It doesn't matter what role you go in, you can complete it no matter what you're doing. The difficulty of the dungeon itself will be scaled based on how many people are there. So if you're in there solo, it's not going to be that hard. If you're in there with 4 people, it'll be a little harder. It'll be like a regular dungeon, maybe a little bit tougher. What makes it like Boja is, if you remember in the Boja instances, you were able to select 2 like abilities. And then, of course, when you went into Delirium Reginae, I think it was called, you could select those 2 abilities plus like different items that you could do. You can't use the items in variant dungeons, but you do see you got 2 variant actions here. Okay, I'm gonna go over what they are. So you can pick 2 out of this list, and each one represents a certain role ability. So there's 2 healing, 2 tanking, I think, and then 1 DPS, which seems kind of skewed to me, but the DPS one's pretty nice. I'll go over them just like super real quick. So there's Variant Cure. It's an instant cast, but it does trigger your global cooldown. 14,000 cure potency. Also applies a 4,200 potency regen for 15 seconds. This is actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. If you aren't in there as a healer class, even as a warrior, if you're going in as a tank, even as a warrior with all the self-healing we have, Variant Cure is nice to have because it actually got my ass out of a hot situation when I screwed up a mechanic on one of the bosses, and I was like, oh snap. Equilibrium's down. Bloodwetting will be up in a couple seconds, but what if I like get hit by something before I can smack the boss and restore that HP? Variant Cure was like boom, and the super regen that's on it was absolutely nasty, and it saved my ass. So definitely good if you are not healing class. Then we have Variant Ultimatum. This is essentially, it's taunt with a stun. 4-second stun, and it also increases your threat generation for 30 seconds. So this is good if you're in there as a healer or a DPS and you're paired up with somebody else and somebody needs to get the focus of the boss. It's always good to have Ultimatum plus that extra stun. I'm not sure if the stun works on bosses. I haven't tested it, but if it does, that's broken. SOP. It's so good. Variant Raise. Nothing really to say about here. It's Resurrection. Anyone can take it. So I'll just skip over it. Variant Spirit Dart. Now this is the DPS ability. This is the 1 DPS ability, but it deals damage over time to a target and all enemies nearby. So it's single target and AoE. 2040 potency for 30 seconds. This makes it so much easier for tanks going in solo or in pairs, and healers going in solo or in pairs to just clear everything quickly. It actually it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot of damage all like at once. It's definitely worth taking if you're going in as a tank, and especially solo. And then we have Variant Rampart, which is same thing as a tank's regular Rampart with a little bit of a twist. So reduces damage taken by 20%, lasts 60 seconds, which is bananas, and it creates a barrier around the self that absorbs damage equivalent to a heal of 21,000 potency. So it's a really good cooldown to have. If you're going in as a tank, you can't take it, plain and simple, but even if you could, you probably wouldn't really need it because you have all your other mitigations. This is great, especially if you're going in as like a summoner or a monk or something solo or in a duo, and you want to make sure you don't get like slapped around. This will keep you alive. So when you run a variant, you take one of 2 of these, or 2 of these you pick out of that list, set actions, and then this little button here, if you want to go in solo, leave it blank, click register for duty, and it's just like a dungeon. You queue in and you go. If you want to join as a party, you can click this, and then you can, as far as I'm aware, you can join either random people or you can make a pre-made. Totally up to you. Now, this is just the first iteration. This is just variant dungeons. As far as I'm aware, you can run it as much as you want to. Then we have Criterion dungeons. Now, Criterion dungeons are a harder version of the variant dungeons with a few other additional twists. So you can only run a Criterion dungeon after you've completed the very first variant dungeon. Once you've done that, you'll unlock Criterion. And Criterion, I don't know if the loot that you get from Criterion is pot shards as well, but I know you also get these, which are Sylvan Silvers, which again is another vendor. Same thing with rewards. You turn in the silvers, you get the rewards. This one has to be done in a party. You cannot do it solo. So you have to have a party of 4, and I think it adheres to, yes, you have to have one of each. You can't change jobs while you're in there. You can't go in with an undersized party. You can't go in with all tanks or all healers or anything like that. It has to be standard. You also can only take one variant action, which it says it's preset only, which means I'm stuck with variant raise 2. Whoop-de-doo. Great. The last thing to know about the Criterion dungeon is also that there's no or less of a story element to it. So in the variant dungeon, you kind of follow that specific NPC around. You don't have that in Criterion. In Criterion, it's all up to you. You pick your own path, your own way, you do your own thing. So this is why it's going to be important. You're going to communicate with your teammates on which way to go and which way you want to do it, because it does affect certain outcomes within that dungeon, especially if you're trying to get all your journal entries done. And then the third version of this is just Savage version of Criterion, which is, again, extremely, hard, much like other Savage content. I wouldn't say extremely hard. It's hard, much like other Savage content. You're expected to go in with an adequate item level number. You have to go in with a pre-made group of 4 people. You have to adhere to the standard four-person party roles. And you don't get any variant actions. So it's just like doing a really, really, really hard dungeon. That's pretty much it. So that is the quick and dirty rundown on variant and Criterion dungeons. Now, what can you expect of rewards for them? Is it worth going through and doing this? So, in my opinion, given what the reward is, I don't have it yet, obviously, but I will get it eventually. Given what the reward is for getting all 12 of your journal entries in the variant dungeon, I would say that one is worth it. That one is definitely worth it. Beyond that, for me, I don't think it's worth it after that. For me, it personally is not. The reason is because, sure, you can get a couple minions out of the chests there at like a random drop rate. So, I mean, sure, okay, if you're a minion collector, it's good. But the pot shards get you nothing that's worth it, in my opinion. Like, okay, so there's from the pot shards from variant dungeon, you get, what do you get? You can get an earring, glamour. You can get, I want to say that's where you can get the new emote, and then you also get a glamour set, which of course you have to buy each piece separately. But it's the one that's been demoed. It's like the detective set, the long trench coat, the hat, and the glasses. Yeah, that's what you get from variant dungeons. So if that's your thing, if that's your jam, get in there, grab them shards. For me, it's not my jam. So I'm just kind of like, I could do without all of that. I'll only be doing variant dungeons, probably solo, and I'll only do them until I get all 12 journal entries, and then I'll just probably really touch it again unless they change something. The Criterion version, where you get the silvers, you get a couple more kind of different, not really. So you can spend your silvers on either a Adventurer Plates frame kit, a mount, which is, I believe, just a giant blue floating throne. There's one other thing. I want to say maybe it's a minion, and then like one other prize that I can't think of off the top of my head right now for the silvers. And then everything after that, this big long list, everything after those like 4 items is just materia. You're just exchanging for materia. So is the amount of time you're going to invest in this versus the rewards worth it? No, not in my opinion. Not right now. Not right now. Maybe later on they'll refine it and they'll add more things, but for the right now, no, it's not worth it. It's great if you're bored and you need something to do, but other than that, I'd say nah. Get your 12 journal entries in variant, get the reward from that, and then don't touch it again. That's my personal thing. Is it good content? It's good content. It is fun. I just wish it rewarded you with something more significant. But that's not to say with the last feature I'm about to discuss right now that won't get roped in somehow. I'm pretty sure it's going to get roped in somehow, so be ready for this. So obviously the last thing on the list, and this is probably the biggest one for, I would say, everybody, is of course, as you see what I am sitting here with on my shoulder here, is the next stage, or should I say the very beginning, of the Endwalker Relic quest. That's right. Time to grind has come upon us, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, relic weapons are here. For those of you who aren't aware of what relics are, if you're like strictly a brand new player, every expansion there is one weapon for every job that is available that is considered a relic weapon. It is a unique, in appearance, weapon for the specific job that you've chosen that requires a long, grindy quest to complete or chain of quests to complete. But in the end, it will be worth it because in a way, you'll have a unique looking weapon. I mean, it's not really unique when a bajillion other players have it as well. But the most important thing is at the end of the expansion, when you've still got, between like 6 to 8 months before the next expansion comes out, you will have, if you finish your relic weapon, you will have the most powerful weapon in the game, which will last you quite a while in the next expansion, mind you. Usually until like 6 levels in, maybe even 7 levels in to the next expansion. So you just will not have to swap that weapon out for a while. It will be worth it. This iteration of the relic weapon I actually enjoy. It gets the 2 thumbs up for me, both in design and how you obtain it, and I'm going to tell you how. Now, some people may disagree with me on this because they probably haven't touched this quest chain since A Realm Reborn or even during A Realm Reborn, so they've got a lot of work to do. But obviously, these are known as the Manderville relic weapons. And that, of course, means they are tied into none other than the Hildebrand Manderville quest line. So if you have not touched the Hildebrand quest line, but you want to get your Endwalker relic, you best get grinding on those now. Luckily for me, I had completed all of my A Realm Reborn ones, and I could definitely say by level 90, you should be able to get from Heaven's Ward through to current state of Manderville quest in like less than 4 hours tops. And that's like going slow and casual, so it's really not that hard. There's some cutscenes, there's a couple boss fights here and there. It's goofy, it's silly, it's a fun quest story to follow. I suggest it, even if all you're doing it for is the relic weapons. That's the prerequisite part. That's the first step. Once you are caught up to the current iteration of the Manderville quest line in Endwalker, then you will get a quest to unlock the relic weapons, which will involve Geralt, of course, the old mainstay, and none other than Godbert Manderville himself. And for this iteration of the weapons, it is super simple. Once you get through the initial quest and you watch a couple cutscenes, read a little bit of dialogue, your task here is to literally buy 3 pieces of Manderville meteorite shards or something similar to that name from an NPC right there in Radzahan, sent there by Rowena. No surprise there. And they cost 500. I always forget the name of these. Whoops, wrong tab. 500 of these guys. 500 tomestones of astronomy each. So each relic weapon right now, in the current state, which is fresh off the block, is going to cost you 1,500 tomestones of astronomy to get one weapon. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Is it a little grindy? Sure, if you gotta grind out the tomestones. But I mean, even then, they're astronomy tomestones. They're gonna be super easy to get. So this step is not really grindy, and that's another part of the reason why it gets 2 thumbs up for me, because they did the same thing back in Shadowbringers, where the very first stage was just like, hey man, you do something super cheap, easy. Here's your beginning stage of the relic weapon. Here you go. Just give it to me. Whereas, like, you know, back in the day of A Realm Reborn, there was like a 20-part quest chain just to get your base relic. Never mind everything else. There were 2 boss fights, a couple dungeons. You had to meld materia into a crafted weapon. Oh man. Ugh. Gone are those days. They've kept it quick, they kept it easy. It helps getting players trying to catch up in the door quicker, and it helps players like me, who, yeah, right now it's just a glorified glamour stick. It keeps us from having to worry about doing extra grinding at the moment. We can save all our energy on the grind for the next steps leading on, where we get our glowies, and then when it changes shape, and then gets more glowier, etc., etc. The stats on the weapon are not the best. That's not the weapon. That's my tomestone weapon. They are eye level 615, so technically speaking, if you were getting one for your main job and you're not a fresh level 90, you're probably going to want to just invest in the tomestone weapon because it's 620. And that item level, that +1 weapon damage is king. But you can see two material slots, eye level 615. It's still pretty good. Good weapons all around. I suggest you start getting them. They're cheap, they're easy, and they all look pretty good from what I've seen of the preview pictures. They all look pretty nasty. So that's really all I got for the rundown and the lowdown and the quick and dirty of 6.25. Hasn't really been quick, I guess. We're getting on almost 30 minutes. How would I rate this patch? I mean, there's really not much to it, so I can't really give it anything too crazy, but I would say a 6 out of 10 for this patch. Mostly just because, I mean, the variant dungeons does give us something extra to do. The relic weapons, again, very excited for relic weapons. That's all I got, though, man. I can't really justify giving it any higher. They didn't really give us anything. Now, I may change my opinion, combine my review of this with patch 6.28 when they start slinging us alliance raids and job balances, but we'll see. We will see. So that's just about all the time I got for tonight, guys. I'm sorry for rambling. I am a little bit tired, so you'll have to excuse me on that, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to hit my shameless plug spiel now, where if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comment section down below. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. And if you really like the video and you want to see more from me, more from my channel, you want to get notifications when I go live, you want to get notifications every time I post a new video, if you want to gaze upon the greatness that is my Halloween horror extravaganza of 2022 that is still currently going on for, well, all the way up until Halloween itself, please hit that subscribe button. I would very much appreciate it. It'll help my channel grow, and I am 1 subscriber away from hitting my goal of just 10 subscribers before the end of 2022, so please help make that happen. I don't like begging, but I'll do it. If it means I get that 1-0, I will do it. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.